Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum again to everyone. So welcome to our class for today. Today we will continue our discussion on the producer behavior, particularly in the context of pure monopoly. Before this, we have discussed the producer behavior in the context of pure competition. We have discussed how a purely competitive firm decides on output as well as in terms of identifying the point in which they will try to produce to maximize profit or to minimize loss, both in the short run as well as the economic impact in the long run. For today, we will continue our discussion on the second market model, which is on pure monopoly. Okay, these are some of the chapter objectives. First, we will recap the characteristics of pure monopoly. We will look at the revenue structure of a pure monopoly. We will talk about the decisions of pure monopoly in terms of output and price, and also finally on the economic impact of pure monopoly and how the government may deal with this economic impact with some regulations. Regulation is only one aspect of how the government can deal with pure monopoly. Okay, a quick look at the characteristics of pure monopoly. Single seller or a sole producer. So basically the seller or the firm is the industry as well. So remember when we discuss pure competition, we will always have two diagrams. One is the individual seller and the other one is on the industry as a whole. However, for pure monopoly, there's no such distinctions because the seller or the producer is also the industry. If we are talking about the automotive industry, let's say companies selling cars, if we assume that Proton is the only seller, Proton is a pure monopoly. Therefore, whenever we talk about Proton, we are actually talking about the automotive industry. In the past, for example, Malaysia Airlines was the only aviation company providing domestic air travel. So at that time, when we talk about the domestic aviation industry, we are also talking about Malaysia Airlines. Or when we talk about Malaysia Airlines, we are talking about the local or the domestic aviation industry. So basically, there's no more distinction between industry and seller or industry and producer because the producer is the only seller in the market, or the pure monopoly is the only producer in the market, and therefore the producer is actually representing the industry. There's no close substitute to the product because the seller is the only producer and seller of the product in the market. Pure monopoly has great ability in determine the price. Yeah? Whatever they produce will be the total market supply. As such, uh, if they cut down their output, so the total supply in the market will be lower and price will go up. Yeah. The reason why we have pure monopoly in the first place is because there is barrier for firms to enter into the industry. Yeah, we will discuss some of these barriers which block the entry of new firms into the market in our next slide. And also, we have identified that in our previous discussion that pure monopoly, despite not facing any competition at all, still engage in advertisement activities or non-price strategy. Yeah, and we have identified that there can be two important reasons for this. Number one, for the firm to improve its image, yeah, improve its image because normally pure monopoly is associated with negative public perception. Yeah, pure monopoly is exploitative. Yeah, getting too much profit, charging too much, too high price, quality is not good, etc., etc. Yeah, so by engaging in non-price competition, the pure monopolies would be able to project a good image of the company and highlighting the positive aspects of their operation as compared to the negative ones. And secondly, which we will also highlight later, advertisement activities by pure monopolies will enable them to increase demand for their products. And we will see what will be the impact of this increasing demand for pure monopolies later in our discussion. Okay, examples of monopolies. Yeah, we can find typical examples of pure monopolies. Okay, let us continue with the discussion. We have discussed about the examples of examples of pure monopoly, where it basically exists in utility sector, yeah? Such as the supply of water, electricity, and I have mentioned about the maintenance of the sewage system. And also in Malaysia, we have rail transportation as well, being a pure monopoly. In terms of near monopolies, this is a situation in which a particular company, one single company, dominates the whole industry. Even though we have many firms producing in that market, but one firm basically controls a huge share of the industry and therefore dictates and behave as if they are a pure monopoly. Yeah? For example, Intel, wherever you go, you will see that computers will have microchip processors from Intel, even though there are many other producers of microchip processors. Another example here given in the textbook is De Beers. De Beers is a producer of diamonds. Yeah? In the past, they were able to control the supply of diamonds in the world by owning most of the diamond mines. Yeah, so even though there are many producers of diamonds, but they are not as big as De Beers. Yeah. They try to control the market for diamonds at the global level by buying up all diamond mines. Yeah. But this strategy is no longer possible nowadays because you just cannot own and control diamond mines everywhere in the world. Yeah? So they have abandoned the strategy of controlling the supply through the ownership of diamond mines simply because there are too many diamond mines at the global level. Yeah? Okay, these are some of the barriers to entry. Okay, the first one is legal barriers. For example, patents or licenses. Yeah. For example, in the past, Bank Islam Malaysia Berhad, yeah, was given the only license to offer Islamic banking services. At that time, even though there are so many other banks that can also provide Islamic banking services, but they don't have the license to operate. Therefore, from 1983 to 1993, Bank Islam was the only provider of Islamic banking services. Similarly, in the past, Celcom was the only telco company that provides mobile telecommunication. So only after some years where license were given to other telco providers and also other banks, yeah. In the case of telco providers, you have more companies such as Maxis, DG, and in recent times, you have also smaller companies, XOX, U-Mobile, TuneTalk, and so many other companies, which creates more competition in the market. Financial barrier is another important barrier that blocks the entry of firms into the industry. For example, if let's say you want to establish a bank, you need a lot of financial capital. If you want to establish a rail transportation company, you need huge investment in infrastructure. Yeah, all of this contributed to the barrier for firms to enter into the industry. Technology is also another barrier. Even though you may have a lot of financial capital, just look at countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, yeah, Kuwait. They have a lot of money, yeah, petrodollars, in the billions. Yeah. However, because of technology, they are not able to produce a lot of things which require high level of technology, security system, IT system, even weapons. Yeah. So, even with a huge amount of financial capital, if you don't have the technology, the know-how, how to produce a particular product, therefore you are still not able to enter the industry. Yeah? Another example, commercial aircraft. Not many companies can produce commercial aircraft. We have Boeing and Airbus, for example, the two major companies producing commercial aircraft for the whole world. Yeah? So technology is an important barrier to entry. And then ownership of essential resources. So if we link back to the example of De Beers, we have seen how De Beers control the market by controlling or owning the important resources for the production of the goods. For example, De Beers involved in the business of selling and supplying diamonds. So if they are able to control and own diamond mines, which is the important source of diamonds, then they are able to control the supply of diamonds. Yeah? And then we have economies of scale. Economies of scale, if you still remember from our discussion in topic 7, economies of scale is the benefit for a firm to increase their scale of production. As they increase their output, there can be a reduction in the cost per unit. So this is what we consider as economies of scale. Because of economies of scale, they are able to produce in lower cost per unit, and therefore they can also set a relatively low price, which creates a barrier or hindrance for new firms to enter. Okay, let me highlight this using this diagram. Okay, if we are talking about a pure monopoly which is currently in operation, they may have enjoyed significant economies of scale. Let's say they are operating at 200 units here. the cost will be very low. In this example is $10 per unit, right? So they can even make profits by charging $15 or even $11. Yeah? So since the cost per unit is only $10. If another company wants to enter the industry, they cannot immediately produce in large quantities. At the initial stage, they may produce in a low level of production. For example, they may produce only 50 units. Yeah? So when they produce 50 units at the initial stage of their production, their cost per unit will be still relatively high. In this example, $20 per unit. So how can they compete with the existing company or the existing pure monopoly, which has significantly enjoyed an economies of scale with only $10 per unit cost of production? So even if the new company try to absorb some losses by charging a lower price, let's say at cost, $20, this cannot be the company cannot compete with the existing company. Yeah? So because of this, it gives an advantage for the existing pure monopoly to maintain its position because of the benefits of economies of scale that they have. Okay, now we move to monopoly demand. Okay, we assume that there's no government intervention. Monopoly status is secure. In other words, there's no threat of a new firm trying to enter the industry. So when there's no threat for new firms to enter into the industry, the pure monopoly can behave as normal, behaving like any other firms in terms of maximizing profit. If there is a threat of new firms trying to enter the industry, then the pure monopoly may not behave in a regular way, maximizing profit. The firm may try to reduce the price, and therefore creating a situation that is not advantageous for the new firm to enter. As I have shown earlier, your cost is $10. You want to create a barrier for firms to enter, you just reduce your price to only 11 or 12. The new company or the new potential entry to industry would not be able to compete because their initial cost of production will be $20. Yeah, so they even at cost, they will not be able to compete with the existing firm. So we assume that there's no threat of potential entry, so the firm will behave regularly and maximize profit. No government regulation that will impose certain pricing policy, so the firm will decide based on profit maximization. And the pure monopoly only have one price charged to all customers. Okay, when we discuss about pure competition, we always have two diagrams. One for the individual seller, the other one is for the industry or the market. We already highlighted that pure monopoly is the seller and the industry. Yeah? So the pure monopoly is selling to the whole market because the firm is the only seller. So the demand facing the pure monopoly is the market demand. So there's no more distinction between demand facing the firm and demand facing the whole industry like what we had for pure competition. So the pure monopoly will be facing the market demand curve. And when we look at the shape of the market demand curve, it is a downward sloping curve. When we have a downward sloping market demand curve, it means that the price and quantity demanded is inversely related. If you want to sell additional units in the market, you need to reduce the price. Okay, let's look at this schedule. Let us focus on on the price, the quantity, total revenue, and marginal revenue first. The rest we will return to them a bit later. Yeah. Number one, it is important to recognize that despite being the pure monopoly, the only seller in the market, the pure monopoly cannot expect that customers will continue to buy even when they charge a very, very high price. For example, if let's say Tenaga Nasional Berhad would like to increase the tariff for electricity, let's say now the average rate is 50 cents per kilowatt of electricity. If they increase it to 3 ringgit per kilowatt of electricity, it's too high. I think many people would try to search for an alternative for energy, for electricity. They may, for example, invest in buying a generator set, because even though the cost can be high, but in the longer term, it is much cheaper. Or people turn to solar panel for electricity. So if the price charge is too high, maybe the quantity sold can drop to zero. It's possible. Yeah? All right. So in this example, this is taken from your textbook. If the pure monopoly charge $172 per unit, the quantity sold will be zero. If the producer charge $162 per unit, the firm can sell 1 unit. In order to sell 2 units, the pure monopoly needs to reduce the price further to $152 per unit. If they want to sell 3 units, the firm needs to reduce it further to $142 per unit. If they want to increase further the quantities to 4 units, they need to reduce the price further to $132 per unit, and so on. Okay, so in other words, the market demand represent an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. This is different from pure competition. The individual seller can sell additional unit at the same price level. That's why the demand curve facing the individual seller in a purely competitive market is perfectly elastic. Yeah? Demand is perfectly horizontal. Let's look at the revenue structure. So total revenue in this example is price times quantity, column 1 times column 2. If the price is 172, 0 units is sold, so the total revenue will be 172 times 0 equals 0. If the price is set at $162, then 1 unit is sold, so 162 times 1, total revenue is $162. If the price is set at $152 per unit, so 2 units will be sold, and total revenue will be 152 times 2, $304. If the price is set to be at 142, then 3 units will be sold, so 142 times 3, it will be $426 of total revenue. Yeah, so the rest you can continue. Now we move to the next column, which is marginal revenue. Yeah, so the formula for marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. What is the additional revenue by selling one more additional unit? So we just look at the difference between the total revenue from one level to the next. Yeah? When we charge $172 per unit, total revenue is 0. When we reduce the price to 162, we are able to sell 1 unit, and total revenue increased from 0 to 162. So the marginal revenue of producing and selling the first unit is $162. Note that the price and the marginal revenue for the first unit are the same. $162 of price, $162 of marginal revenue. However, after that, marginal revenue figures will be below the price figures. For example, for the second unit, total revenue increased from 162 to 304. So marginal revenue will be 304 minus 162. It will be 142. Marginal revenue of the second unit is $142. But the price is 152. Yeah, so the marginal revenue figures is below the price level. If we continue, the marginal revenue for the third unit, so total revenue increased from 304 to 426. Yeah, the difference is 122. $122 marginal revenue by selling the third unit. Okay, and the price here is 142. So again, marginal revenue of 122 is below the price of 142. Okay. Let's look at why does this happen. Okay. If the monopoly is currently selling 3 units by charging $142 per unit, so total revenue will be 3 times 142, which is 426. In order to sell the fourth unit, the price needs to be reduced to 132. Okay, so when the pure monopoly reduce the price to 132, the pure monopoly is able to sell the fourth unit. Yeah? So selling the fourth unit and get an additional revenue of 132. But remember, the new price 132 is also applicable to all the 3 units prior to that. Yeah, before this, you are selling 3 units for 142. Now you are selling 4 units for $132 per unit. So your gain will be an additional $132 from the fourth unit sold, but your loss will be the $10 lower price for the first 3 units sold. Yeah, so your net gain or your marginal revenue will be 132 minus $30. $10 lower price times 3 units before that. Yeah, so $30. So your marginal revenue by selling the fourth unit is only 102. And this is below the price of 132. So when we locate this on the marginal revenue curve, we will have that the points for all the other marginal revenue figures will be below the price. Yeah, so when we plot the curve, the marginal revenue curve will lie below the demand curve. Even though they initially started from the same point, 162 at 1 unit, but the marginal revenue dropped faster than the price. So this is another important feature of the revenue structure under pure monopoly. Under pure competition, because the seller can sell additional units at the same market price, the marginal revenue will always be the same with the price. Therefore, the marginal revenue curve and the demand curve overlaps. Yeah, so the two curves are on the same line, yeah, perfectly horizontal. But in this case, as the pure monopoly needs to reduce the price in order to sell additional unit, and the lower price will be applicable to all the prior units sold, Therefore, the marginal revenue curve will lie below the demand curve. They are no longer overlapping each other. You have a separate curves, one for the marginal revenue and the other one for the demand curve. Okay. Okay, firm under pure monopoly is a price maker. So they have the ability to determine price, not like pure competition where the price is determined by market forces. So because they have the ability to determine price, profit maximization decision will involve two decisions. One, determine price. Secondly, determine output. In other words, determine the price and output combination that will maximize the profit of the firm. Unlike pure competition, the price is given to them. They only need to decide on the output. Price is left to the market forces. Okay? And when they want to decide in terms of the price and quantity output, they will choose the portion where the demand curve is elastic. This is when the marginal revenue is greater than zero or positive. Okay, we have discussed this when we talk about price elasticity of demand and the total revenue in topic 5. Okay, look at the diagram here. Okay, so the demand curve can be divided into 3 areas. The first one, the one on the left at the top, represent the portion of the demand curve which is elastic. Beyond that level, when marginal revenue becomes negative, the demand curve becomes inelastic. So the point in between elastic demand and inelastic demand will be a particular point where demand is unit or unitary elastic. Look at the total revenue curve. Yeah, during the within the segment of elastic demand, total revenue increase as you continue to produce additional units. However, when marginal revenue becomes negative, when you produce and sell additional units, total revenue will fall. There will be no right-minded producer that would produce beyond the point where MR is zero. This is because when you want to produce additional unit, you would expect that your total revenue will increase by selling them. But in this case, within the portion of the inelastic demand, producing beyond MR equals zero will result in lower total revenue, not higher, lower total revenue. And when we want to produce additional units, we will incur additional costs. So it is not logical for right-minded producers to produce more quantities of output, which will incur them higher addition or more additional costs, and as a result, selling them in the market with lower total revenue. So that is why the pure monopoly or any other firms for that matter will limit their price and output decision within the elastic portion of the demand curve. Okay, now after looking at the revenue structure as well as where should the price and output combination for the pure monopoly to be chosen, we go to price and output determination process. Okay, these are the steps. All firms, whether in pure competition, pure monopoly, monopolistic competition, or oligopoly, will have its optimum level of output at the point where MR equal MC. When you produce at the quantity of output where MR equal MC, you either maximize profit or minimize loss.
Step 1, identifying the output where MR equals MC. Step 1. Step 2, determine the price by tracing from your output level to the demand curve for the price. And step 3, determine whether you are making profit or not by comparing the price with average total cost. Okay. Okay, let's use this table to understand the marginal revenue, marginal cost approach. So compare the column for marginal revenue and marginal cost. By producing and selling the first unit, marginal revenue is 162. Marginal cost for the first unit is 90. So since marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, the firm will increase its profit by producing and selling the unit. By producing and selling the second unit, marginal revenue for the second unit is 142. Yeah, so $142. But marginal cost for the second unit is only $80. Yeah, so by producing and selling the second unit, the difference between 142 and $80 represent additional profits or marginal profits that the firm can make. So we move to the third unit. Which one is greater, marginal revenue or marginal cost?
Marginal revenue.
So should we produce the third unit?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Let's move to the next level, fourth unit. Which one is higher, marginal revenue or marginal cost?
Marginal revenue.
Yeah, so should we produce the fourth unit?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Let's continue. Should we produce the fifth unit?
Yes.
Should we produce the sixth unit?
Yes.
No.
What is the marginal revenue for the sixth unit?
62.
The marginal cost?
80.
So here marginal cost is larger than marginal revenue, right? If you actually produce the sixth unit, you are not adding profits. In fact, you are taking away some of the profits that you have accumulated before this. Remember, by producing the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth units, you are adding additional profits to your company, to the business. Yeah. But with the production and the sale of the sixth unit, marginal cost has gone higher than marginal revenue. If you do actually produce the sixth unit, you are actually reducing your total profit by how much? 80 minus 62, $18. Yeah, so you will reduce your total profits by $18. So in order to maximize profit, you should stop at 5 units. In this example, marginal revenue is still higher than marginal cost. In this example as well, there is no production level where MR is exactly equals to MC. Yeah, so when MR is not exactly equal to MC, we will stop at the point where MR is larger but closest to MC. We will stop producing when MC has gone above MR. In this case, when we produce 6 units, marginal cost has gone above marginal revenue, so we will not continue with the 6 unit. Okay, look at the diagram. MR intersect with MC, you trace it down to the x-axis for the quantities of output. So 5 units here. Okay, that is the first step. Identify where MR equal MC in the diagram and locate the output on the x-axis. In this example, 5 units. Second step, from 5 units there, you trace it up to the demand curve and go to the left, locate the price on the y-axis. In this example, the price is 122. Yeah, so the price is 122, the output is 5 units. Okay, we are done with step 2. Step 3, identify whether the firm is making profits or loss. So you are producing at 5 units. You trace it up and locate the average total cost for 5 units. And then locate on the y-axis for the value. In this example, average total cost at 5 units is $94. Yeah. When we produce 5 units, cost per unit is $94 and price per unit is 122. How do we compute for profits? There are 2 approaches from the previous slide. The first approach is to find profit per unit. Okay, price per unit is 122, cost per unit is 94. So profit per unit is $28. 122 minus 94. And since we are producing 5 units, 28 times 5 units, so profit per unit of 28 times total units produced and sold, 5 units, equals $140. The second approach is computing based on total revenue and total cost. Right? So price per unit is 122. Number of quantities is 5. So total revenue is 122 times 5, $610 of total revenue. Minus total cost. Cost per unit is $94 times total units is 5. 94 times 5, $470 of total cost. So $610 of total revenue minus $470 of total cost, you will get the same $140 of profits. Misconceptions. The objective of the pure monopoly is not to maximize price. It's to maximize total profit. So you don't claim that the objective of a pure monopoly to increase price as high as possible. Because when they increase price, the sales will drop as well. So there is no guarantee that increasing the price will result in higher profits. Okay. The second misconception is for the firm to maximize total profit, not per unit profit. In this example, the per unit profit is 28, right? By producing 5 units, the price is 122 and the cost per unit is 94. I'm sure if you look at the table, there will be a point in which the price per unit and the cost per unit will give you larger profit per unit. But it will not give you the highest total profits. So in this example, we want to search for the highest amount of total profits and what is the price and output combination that will result in that objective. And finally, there is also a possibility of losses. There is no guarantee that being a pure monopoly will result or will guarantee profits. Yeah? Let us look at some of the examples in Malaysia. In the past, when Malaysia Airlines was the only aviation company providing domestic air travel, they were still making losses. Yeah, in fact, the losses of Malaysia Airlines has been continuous, even until recently. A few restructuring exercise, government spend on bailout packages. Yeah? So you can read this from the news. Secondly, we have Indah Water Consortium. Again, a pure monopoly, but making a lot of losses. KTM, Kereta Api Tanah Melayu, Rail Transport Company, is also making losses. Yeah, I mean, some of the years they may have made some profits, but overall losses were also recorded. Okay, this diagram shows that pure monopolies can make losses. Yeah. Step 1, MR equals MC, and locate the quantity on the x-axis. So you see there QM. Step 2, from QM, trace it up to the demand curve and locate the price on the y-axis, PM. Step 3, profit or loss. Look at from QM, trace it up to the average total cost curve. So ATC there at QM is higher than the price, PM. So the firm is making losses here. Now remember, I have highlighted that despite not facing any direct competition, pure monopoly actively involved in advertisement activities. One of the reasons that I have highlighted is that advertisement may promote customers to increase their demand. Let's look at what will happen if demand for the pure monopoly firm increase. Yeah? Look at the demand curve there. If the advertisement campaign is successful and demand for the firm's product increase, then that demand curve will shift to the right. Remember, marginal revenue will also follow because the initial point of the marginal revenue and the demand curve is the same. So marginal revenue will follow the demand curve to the right as well. And the point where MR equal MC will be at a higher quantity, to the right of QM there. When you trace the new output to the new demand curve, you will have a higher price charged to the customers. And that higher price will cover the average total cost. So increasing demand is an important function of non-price competition strategy, such as advertisement. Despite not facing any competition, a successful advertisement exercise enable the firm to have higher demand for their product that will increase the price of the product in the market and cover the average total cost. So they can reduce their loss or even make profits as a result. Okay, what are the economic effects of pure monopoly? Okay, whenever we want to compare the economic effects of any market structure, whether pure monopoly, oligopoly, or monopolistic competition, we will always compare that to pure competition. And because pure competition, we have identified earlier that number one, purely competitive firms will produce with productive efficiency. In the long run equilibrium, pure competition will have price to be equal to minimum ATC and to be equal to MC, marginal cost. So when the producer or the individual firms under pure competition produce at minimum ATC, they produce at lowest cost possible. So productive efficiency is achieved. When purely competitive firms produce at the point where P equals MC, then the resource is being being efficiently allocated. So allocative efficiency is achieved. Okay, so now let's compare the impact of pure competition with pure monopoly. We have these two diagrams. On the right, we have the diagram showing the industry. On the left, we have a diagram showing the individual seller in pure competition. For pure competition, the diagram on the right is also applicable, because remember when we discuss pure competition, we always have two diagrams, one to represent the industry on the right, the other one is to represent the individual firm on the left. So both diagrams here are applicable to pure competition. But for pure monopoly, only the diagram on the industry is applicable, because we already know from our discussion that the pure monopoly represent the industry. So there is no distinction between the firm and the industry. Now let's look at pure competition first. Yeah. Under pure competition, look at the left diagram. Yeah. Price equals minimum ATC equals MC. Producing at minimum ATC result in productive efficiency. Producing at P equals MC result in allocative efficiency. Both types of efficiency are achieved. Looking at the diagram on the right, yeah, in terms of output and price. For pure competition, the total output in the industry is determined by the market equilibrium quantity shown by QC, where market demand and market supply intersect. So total output in the industry by all the individual firms is represented by QC. And the price charged by all firms in the market is the equilibrium price shown by PC. Now compare that with pure monopoly. Under pure monopoly, the firm will produce at the point where MR equal MC. Now we are adding the marginal revenue curve for pure monopoly. So this is applicable to pure monopoly. So that's why in the diagram there, you can see an additional marginal revenue curve. This is only applicable to pure monopoly. For pure competition, the only ones which are applicable is the market demand and the market supply. We also need marginal cost curve to identify the output level for pure monopoly. And remember in our discussion in topic 8, the supply curve of a firm is the portion of the marginal cost curve of the firm which lies above its average variable cost. So we can use the market supply here as a proxy of the marginal cost curve for the pure monopoly. Yeah, so for pure monopoly, we are adding two curves, marginal revenue curves. Not two curves, we are adding marginal revenue curves, and we use the market supply curve as a proxy of the marginal cost curve for pure monopoly. So the pure monopoly will produce at the point where MR equals MC. And when you locate that on the x-axis, the quantity is shown. The quantity is shown as QM. Yeah. From QM, you trace it up to the demand curve and locate the price on the y-axis. So it shows there PM. So price under pure monopoly is PM. Quantity or total output under pure monopoly is QM. When we compare the output and price, we can see that under pure monopoly, the price is higher and the output is lower. Okay, so there is a tendency for pure monopoly to cut down output or reduce output and charge higher price to customers. Okay, so how about productive efficiency and allocative efficiency? Okay, let's look at the diagram again. Okay, allocative efficiency is achieved when price equals marginal cost. Okay, do pure monopoly achieve allocative efficiency? You look at the diagram on the right there, applicable for pure monopoly. They will produce at QM with price at PM. If you trace from QM upward, you will see that marginal cost represented by the supply curve there is much lower than the price on the demand curve there. So PM is significantly higher than marginal cost at QM. So resource is not efficiently allocated. This is a case of underproduction because allocative efficiency would be achieved if the output level is at QC. At QC, price will be PC. So PC price is equal to MC at QC. So the price PC is equal to the marginal cost represented on the point on that supply curve or marginal cost curve at QC there. So this is the result under pure competition. But under pure monopoly, at QM, you trace it up, PM is higher than the marginal cost. Under production is taking place here. How about consumer surplus and producer surplus? Okay, let's go back to the diagram here. Under pure competition, when the industry produce at PC and output is at QC, the whole area under the demand curve and above PC represent consumer surplus. And the whole area above the supply curve and below PC represent producer surplus, the whole triangle there. Yeah, so consumer surplus and producer surplus are maximized. But under pure monopoly, the output level produced is only up to QM. Yeah, up to QM. So there will be a loss of consumer surplus between QM and QC. So the area under the demand curve and above PC between QM and QC represent the loss to consumer surplus. The same goes for producer surplus as well. However, because of the higher price that the producer is charging, even though the producer is losing the small triangle below PC and above the supply curve between QM and QC, but they are gaining in terms of additional revenue coming from the difference between PC and PM. Yeah, the rectangle between PM, PC, and from 0 to QM. So that is the additional revenue going to the pure monopoly as a result of increasing the price from under pure competition, it will be at PC, but under pure monopoly, it will be at PM. In other words, there will be a transfer of income from the consumers, because consumer is losing their consumer surplus, but not but this is going to the producer in terms of additional revenues. These are some of the impacts. The next issue is on productive efficiency. Okay, let's look at this diagram. We already recognize that there is a tendency for producer under pure monopoly to cut down output and to increase price to maximize profit. Right? So, if we look at the average total cost curve here, if the producer produce at Q2, the cost per unit can be as low as ATC2. But because the pure monopoly cut down their output and increase their price, because to maximize profit, their output level will be somewhere at Q1. So when they produce at Q1, they are not able to produce at lower cost at ATC2. So the difference between the cost ATC1 and ATC2 is known as X inefficiency. So they actually produce at Q1 with the cost per unit at ATC1. Whereas if they produce at the lowest cost possible at Q2, their potential cost per unit may be as low as ATC2. But they didn't do this. To maximize profit, they cut down their output, and therefore at Q1, their actual cost per unit is ATC1. So they are not producing at productive efficiency at the point where ATC is the lowest. Okay, what else that pure monopoly can do? They can also do price discrimination. Okay, what is price discrimination? Price discrimination is when a firm charge different prices to different customers. Charging different prices to different customers. Charging different prices to different customers. I repeat, charging different prices to different customers. Different prices to different customers, even though there is no difference in the cost. Yeah? For example, if you take a flight, just ask the passenger next to you how much they are paying for the air ticket. Yeah? I think most definitely they will pay a different price or different fare, yeah, as you are paying. But you are receiving the same service, yeah, the same economy class, the same meals, the same service from the cabin crew, and so on. But you are paying different prices, yeah. Okay. There are a number of different ways how firms can price discriminate. Okay, the first one is perfect price competition. The first is perfect price discrimination, where the firm charge the full reservation price. Reservation price is the willingness of the buyer to pay for the product. So this one is quite difficult for firms to do because they need to know what is inside the head of the customer. If you are able to read minds, you know when Ahmad comes to your shop, or Ahmad is willing to pay 20 ringgit for this product, even though you initially wanted to sell for 15 ringgit, because you know that Ahmad is willing to pay 20 ringgit, you sell Ahmad for 20 ringgit. Another person comes, you know that his or her willingness to pay is 18 ringgit, you sell the product to her or to him for 18 ringgit. So this one needs ability of you to get information from the customers. That's why many firms collect data from their customers. Sales, purchase data. They collect a lot of data, profiling customers in order to come up with some estimation how much a particular customer will be willing to pay for a certain product. So this is how they are trying to find ways in order to increase total revenue. The second approach is to charge different group of customers different prices according to their price elasticity of demand. Some people, they don't like to bargain. They just pay whatever the price. So for this group of people where the price elasticity of demand is inelastic, charge them high price. They will still buy the product and therefore your total revenue will go up. But for customers with more sensitive attitude towards price, for this group of people, their price elasticity of demand is high. So in order to increase total revenue from this group of people, you need to give them discount, reduce the price, and so on. That's why there are many firms charging different groups of people different prices. Adult, different price. Children, the elderly, students, they are all charged different price. Let's say you want to go to a theme park, most of the time the children will be going on the rides more frequently than the adults. So the children should be charged higher price, but instead the adult are charged higher price in order to represent the different groups and different price elasticity of demand. And then there's also another approach, charging different price for different quantities of output you consume. For example, electricity. The tariff is not the same. For the first 200, for the first 200 kilowatts, the price is only about 26 cents per kilowatt. For the next 100, from 201 to 300 kilowatts, then the tariff will be around 33 cents. 33 cents. Above 300 kilowatt, let's say up to 500 kilowatts, the price is 55 cents per kilowatt. So you can check your TNB bills. They will identify your total consumption and they will break down the details, the first 200 units, the next 100 unit, etc., etc. That's why recently the government give free electricity for the first 300 kilowatts, which is equal to 77 ringgit. But there are also situation in which the price for additional units is lower. You buy the first unit for 10 ringgit, but if you buy 2 units, then the price for the 2 unit is 16 ringgit. So in other words, the second unit is only 6 ringgit. So this is also another way of price discriminating, giving lower price for those who buy in larger quantities. Okay, there's also the last one here, membership. Price based on membership. If you are a member, then you are charged a lower price. If you are not a member, the price will be higher. Okay, in order for a firm to price discriminate, they need to have these 3 conditions or fulfill these 3 conditions. They need to have monopoly power. Monopoly power does not only exist with pure monopoly. It can exist with monopolistic competition and oligopoly as well. As long as the firm has the ability to determine price, it means they have some degree of monopoly power. Of course, pure monopoly will have the highest level of ability to determine price. Okay. Only pure competition doesn't have any monopoly power. The other three market models, all the firms have some degree of monopoly power. Secondly, they must be able to segregate the market. Yeah, you need to be able to segregate the market. For example, based on price elasticity of demand, so that you are able to charge different groups of people different price. And there should be no resale. If there is a resale, then people will take advantage of the differences in price. Let's say the price for children is lower than the price for adult. So those people who have a lot of children, they get their children to buy all the tickets for children, and then the parents will sell these to adults at a higher price, but still lower than the adult price sold by the firm itself. Another example, let's say Asia ticket. I buy the ticket now for the travel in the future. Let's say 3 months from now. Let's say I have 9 ringgit ticket to Kota Baru. I'm sure by the time that the flight, the date of the flight is nearing, the price will go up. Let's say after 2.5 months, let's say 2 weeks from the departure period, the air ticket, the price for the air ticket increased to 200 ringgit. I bought it only 9 ringgit 3 months ago. So if I manage to sell this, Asia will collapse, because they will not be able to sell ticket with full price because of these reselling activities of the people who purchase the price much earlier. So there must be some mechanism to block this reselling of products whenever there is price discrimination being exercised by the firm. Okay, this is an example. You have two groups of people here, students and owners of businesses. Students will have more elastic demand, so that's why the demand curve is flatter. And then the business owners will have a more inelastic demand. So if the firm wants to increase total revenue, they should charge higher price to business owners because the demand is inelastic. And they should charge a lower price to students because the demand is elastic. Yeah, that is how they structure the price discrimination in order to increase total revenue. Okay. Now we have discussed quite a number of issues with regard to pure monopoly. Quickly, number one, pure monopoly produce lower output, charge higher prices, produce not at minimum cost per unit, not achieving allocative efficiency. What else? There's a transfer of income from consumers to the pure monopoly because of the higher price that the monopoly is charging to the customers. And also, just now, we have discussed that pure monopoly is also able to price discriminate, charging different groups of people different prices. So what we need to do? Okay, number one, the government should have a proper mechanism to ensure a reasonable level of competition in the market. That's why in Malaysia, for example, we have Malaysian Competition Commission. In the US, for example, they have antitrust law. These laws are basically there in order to ensure that companies will not exercise extreme monopoly power and exploit consumers. Okay. The government can also decide to break up the firms. This had happened to Microsoft at the early stage of its operation. When they launched Windows, they bundle it together with the internet browsing software, Internet Explorer at that time. And that basically, they produce operating system, but they want to also bundle it with apps or softwares together with the operating system. And therefore, companies like Netscape have had challenged that in the court, and the United States court decided to break up the operating system business and the software business. So basically, this is how the government can break up competition in the market. Break up monopoly and promote competition in the market. Additionally, the government can also increase competition by providing more license. By providing more license, more companies can come into the industry and therefore compete with the existing companies, which previously is a pure monopoly. The government can also ignore. This is because some pure monopoly situation is due to the fact that these companies are pioneer in the industry. For example, Facebook, when it was first introduced, is the only social media platform. Later, you have competition from other companies. There can also be many other examples where initially one company is operating. After some time, new companies enter into the industry. For example, Grab or Uber. Before this, we have Uber, then we have Grab, now we have Myka, and so many other companies. So time will basically remedy because whenever a pioneer in the industry makes a lot of profits, it creates market incentive for new entries. So when new firms enter the industry, automatically it creates competition. And there's also a possibility of the government to regulate pure monopolies. Regulate pure monopolies by imposing certain conditions. For example, Tenaga Nasional, Syabas, these are pure monopolies. Whenever they want to increase the price of their goods, they need to get approval from the government. Okay, so these are some of the policy options. However, not all pure monopolies are bad. In fact, in some situation, pure monopoly is a better option. It's good for the whole market. We consider this to be the case of natural monopolies. Natural monopolies. What are examples of natural monopolies? Okay, natural monopolies is good to consumers because of the extent of economies of scale enjoyed by one firm producing for the whole market. Remember, economies of scale, where companies' cost of production per unit continue to fall when they increase their output level. So if one firm produce for the whole market, they will be able to produce in huge quantities and enjoy significant economies of scale. In the case where economies of scale is significant and extended for a long phase of production scale, in the case of natural monopoly, then we consider this to be good for the customers that only one firm produce for the whole population. The technical definition of natural monopoly can be seen in the diagram. where the average total cost continue to fall even when it cuts the demand curve. In other words, cost per unit continue to fall even up to the point where the firm is producing for the whole market, for the whole population in the industry. Okay. Example, let's say we are talking about water supply. In order to distribute clean water to the homes, buildings, business premises throughout the state of Selangor, Syabas invests in huge infrastructure which require a lot of financial capital, from sourcing the raw water, gathering the water in the reservoir, and then later into the water treatment plant, and then later you need to invest in pump houses to pump the water to the whole state of Selangor, and then you need to have the underground pipes, a network of pipes to distribute the clean water to all the homes. All of this require huge amount of capital. And if, let's say, Syabas is only allowed to distribute clean water to half of the population in Selangor, then the cost per unit may not be as low as what they could have enjoyed if they are able to supply to the whole of Selangor. In other words, by having competition, the cost per unit for each of the firm will be much higher. Let's say we have two companies. Syabas is given the license to distribute clean water for the northern part of Selangor. And another company, let's say Tangkas, is given the license to distribute clean water to the southern part of Selangor. Yeah, so both of them needs to invest in all the infrastructure. Yeah, but they are only able to supply to half of the population in the state of Selangor. So each of them will not able to enjoy significant economies of scale. So cost per unit for each of the firm will be higher. So the implication is, when they are not able to produce at lower cost per unit, they are also not able to charge lower price to their customers. So customers will be at a disadvantage position because they need to pay higher price. In this example, it is better for one firm to produce for the whole population, for the whole market. Okay. If we look at this diagram, look at average total cost. Average total cost continue to fall even when it cuts the market demand. Yeah? So it shows that economies of scale is quite extended. Even when the quantities of output is large enough to be supplied to the whole market, or fulfilling the whole market demand, economies of scale is still there. Cost per unit continue to fall. That is why it is better for this company to produce for the whole population. Because when they produce for the whole population, cost per unit will be at the lowest. If this natural monopoly is allowed to behave like any other firms, in other words, allowed to profit, allowed to maximize profit. So like any other firms, they will produce where MR equal MC. So you can see there, MR intersect with MC. When you locate on the x-axis, the output is at QM, step 1. Step 2, from QM, trace it up to the demand curve, and then locate the price on the y-axis, PM. So this will be the price and output combination for a natural monopoly under the condition of profit maximization. Again, there is a tendency for prices to be higher and output to be lower. Yeah. So what if the government wants to regulate this natural monopoly? So remember, one of the issues with pure monopoly is that they are not efficient. If the government wants to ensure that pure monopoly achieve allocative efficiency, they can impose a policy where the pure monopoly produce at the point where price equals marginal cost. You can identify this point at the point where marginal cost curve intersect the demand curve. When you trace it down to the x-axis for the quantity, it shows there QR. So at QR, you trace it up to the demand curve and locate the price on the y-axis, you will see there PR. So this is called the socially optimal pricing policy. Number one, it will ensure that the pure monopoly produce at allocative efficiency. At QR, PR is equals to MC. Yeah, so resources are efficiently allocated. Yeah, so no underproduction or overproduction. Number two, price will be lowest. Yeah, PR is way below PM. And number three, output is significantly larger. QR is significantly greater than QM. But there will be one important issue. Even though allocative efficiency is achieved, price is lowest, output is highest, but at QR, when you trace it up to the average total cost curve, you will find that PR is lower than ATC. What will happen here? Loss to the pure monopoly, right? Okay. If the government impose this price without any financial assistance to this firm, what will happen? The pure monopoly cannot sustain its operation in the longer term. If the pure monopoly close down, it will create significant impact to the whole population, because normally natural monopoly is in the essential sector such as water supply, electricity, rail transport, and so on. So even though the government can impose the socially optimal price, which resulted in allocative efficiency, but the policy will result in a loss to the pure monopoly. So the government may decide to support pure monopoly by providing financial assistance. The gap between PR and ATC at QR will be the amount that the government needs to compensate to the pure monopoly. This is common when we look at in the context of Malaysia. For example, when the government doesn't want the highway tolls to be increased, the government pay compensation to the companies, the highway providers. Yeah. When the government doesn't want, for example, Tenaga Nasional to increase the tariff, the government may compensate them with some financial assistance in order to cover their potential losses. Okay, what if the government doesn't have the financial ability to provide the subsidy, the financial assistance? The second approach is to impose a fair return policy, fair return pricing. Yeah, this is when the price is just equals to average total cost or per unit cost. You can identify this by locating the point where ATC curve cuts the demand curve. Yeah, ATC cuts the demand curve, trace it down to the x-axis, you will see QF there. QF, yeah. Step 2, QF, trace it up to the demand curve and locate the price on the y-axis, PF. Yeah? So for PF and QF, price is equal to average total cost. There's no issue of financial burden to the government. But at QF, there will still be some degree of allocative efficiency, allocative inefficiency. So at QF, PF is above marginal cost, some degree of allocative inefficiency. However, the government doesn't have to take the financial burden of subsidizing the pure monopoly. So this is a second best solution. Even though QF is smaller than QR, but it is greater than QM. And even though PF is higher than PR, it is still much lower than PM. Yeah, so this is a mid-way solution where the government can avoid taking up that financial burden, at the same time improving the efficiency level and also the lower price and higher quantities for the customers. Okay. Okay, I think I have finished the discussion on pure monopoly. Any questions before we end the class?
Sir, Assalamualaikum, sir.
I would also like to announce on the opening of quiz 3. Yeah, quiz 3 will cover topic 8, 9, and 10. In other words, pure competition and pure monopoly. You will have 2 days to complete this during the weekend. I will open it on Saturday, closing on Sunday, because it's in the weekend. So I just open it for 2 days. You can do the quiz at any time convenient to you. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Sir,
Yes.
I want to ask regarding the date for our final exam.
The final assessment, I have announced it earlier on the 4th of August. Yeah, so I have also included on iTalim the entry for final assessment, which represent 50% of the course assessment. You can download the final assessment question paper from 7 a.m. in the morning on the 4th of August, and you need to submit them before 9 p.m. Yeah, 9 p.m. the same day. So you have 14 hours. 14 hours to do it. Yeah. Hopefully you have sufficient time.
Oh, okay, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Until we meet again on next week. Yeah, for our class. Yeah. So, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you everyone for joining our